When I was in middle school, there was this movie that came out called The Little Giants. It was a movie about two brothers in a hometown. One brother that was a really good football star, the other not so much. They both created a Pee Wee football team to compete to be the town's only football team. The teams were clearly uneven. One was named the Cowboys, being the NFL team at the time. The Dallas Cowboys were really good. And the other name, the Little Giants. Hence the title, Little Giants. You couldn't help but root for the underdog. In this case, the Little Giants. Spoiler alert, the Little Giants won the game at the very last second. This week, we are starting a 3-week series that we are calling Underestimated. Underestimated is probably not a word that you use in your everyday vocabulary, but I bet it's something that we've all have been affected by in our lives. It means to be undervalued, misjudged, or not taken seriously. Maybe you have a teacher that thinks you're an average student and you know that you're smarter than she gives you credit for. Maybe you have a coach that hasn't allowed you the chance to start in the game, and if he just give you the chance, you know you could prove something. Or maybe you're forced to sit at the kids' table at all the family holidays and are forced to eat off the paper plates as opposed to that fancy china that gets busted out at Thanksgiving. That was me for a long time. But I also think there's an area that students sometimes may get the most underestimated or overlooked is in your faith. Yeah, sometimes students fall into the trap of their faith being their parents' faith. You know, your parents make you go to church, lately being watching the church videos, being that we're not in church. So that's the only reason you do. So you have faith because your parents make you. There are some of you that have faith and don't exactly know how to show it. There are some of you that have faith, you live it, and it's just overlooked by adults because you feel like you're too young. I just realized I've been doing a lot of this these past few seconds. My bad. Here's what I want you to know. Just because you were a student doesn't mean owning your faith isn't possible. It's very possible. You have everything you need to own your faith. Okay, I'm about to jump into the message, but if you're watching this right now, I want you to wave in the comments. If you wave, I'm going to put your name in for a drawing and you could win a gift card. But you have to wave in the comments to be a part. All right, back to the message I left off. You have everything you need to own your faith. No matter if you're new to the Christian faith, asking questions about Christian faith, or have known the Christian faith since you were old enough to eat your own Cheerios. I think we all can agree that we've been underestimated. The good news for us is we aren't the only ones or the first ones to really feel that way. Years after Jesus walked the earth, a guy named Paul, whom you've heard us talk about before, he devoted the latter part of his life to the Christian faith and telling everyone he possibly could about Jesus and why people should choose to give their life to Jesus and follow him. Paul realized he couldn't do this big task on his own, so he recruited other people along the way. One guy he recruited, his name was Timothy. Paul and Timothy traveled together spreading the good news of Jesus. Over time, Paul became a mentor to Timothy as Timothy was much younger in age, but also younger in his faith. See, Paul encouraged and instructed Timothy when they were serving together as well as whenever they were apart. He wrote a couple of letters to Timothy, obviously when they were apart. These letters are found in the New Testament. Paul wrote them to encourage and instruct Timothy when they weren't together. Here is one thing that Paul told Timothy as we read it in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5. It says, I remember your genuine faith, for you share the faith that first filled your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice. And I know that same faith continues strong in you. See, Paul is affirming Timothy's genuine faith. Paul was affirming Timothy for his honest, true, real, authentic faith. From everything Paul saw whenever he was with Timothy and heard about him whenever they were apart, Paul knew that Timothy had a genuine faith in God. Timothy owned his faith in a real way. Paul reminded Timothy of the long line of believers that he came from, the faith that was modeled for him by his grandmother and his mom. Having adults in your life modeling what faith looks like is very important. Because just like it made the difference in Timothy's life and his faith, it can make a huge difference in your faith and your life as well. Here's a little bit of a bummer news. Yeah, he had encouragement from some, but he also had people that weren't as supportive in his faith. Not everyone believed that he had what it took to spread the message of Christ. See, Paul had put Timothy in charge of a church that he had started in Ephesus. Some of the older people in that church didn't value Timothy's leadership because they thought that he was too young. And because of that, Timothy may have been tempted to underestimate his own faith. But I love what Paul told Timothy. Get this. In 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12, Paul said this. He said, "Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." See, Paul knew Timothy had older people questioning his faith and his leadership. But Paul wanted Timothy to know that he could own his faith in spite of that. And the same is true for you. Don't underestimate your ability to be an example to others in faith. Don't underestimate your ability to have a real, authentic relationship with God. Never underestimate your faith. Own it this week. Believe that you are old enough. See, it's time to stop making excuses and make a choice to own your faith. Not your parents' faith, not your friends' faith, your faith. You may not know everything, but you're capable of learning and understanding. You've got to believe in yourself. Pick an area of your faith to grow this week. Maybe for you, that's picking a good circle of friends that point you to Jesus. Maybe reading your Bible regularly. Maybe watching what you watch or maybe listen to. Maybe praying for your family or making church a priority. Identify one area of your faith and take the steps to grow. Never underestimate your faith. Love you guys. Miss your faces.